and welcome back to the United Masterclass, a tactical podcast about Man United. I'm your host, Haider Rubbani, and I'm joined by Rob Blanchette as ever. Rob, we're smiles today. United have returned to winning ways with a fantastic 2-0 victory. I'd say probably the best performance of the season so far against a good Spurs side, sitting third in the league. Maybe, they're not as good as the league position shows. United pressed fantastically today. Ten Hag got his tactics spot on, goals from Fred and Bruno. That was really fun to watch and a really enjoyable way to watch United midweek.
Liverpool, Arsenal, and now Tottenham Hotspur. So it's going in the right direction, isn't it? I think we're still seeing hiccups week to week when the team changes, when you're forced to make, maybe moves that you don't want to make with the squad because of injuries and illness. But you saw tonight that when Man United set up, I think the way that they want to, a 4-3-3, Bruno Fernandes running from midfield, a striker that pushes the ball forward and gets in the channels and does some of that hard work, that you're seeing a pretty good Man United team, aren't you? This looks good. So this is not just a case of, we've been starved at success, starved of good football for a long time, so we're just happy with anything. You took a Tottenham team who legitimately believe that they're like top four this year, legitimately believe they're going to be in the Champions League conversation, and they should believe that. And Manchester United today completely shut down Harry Kane, completely shut down Son, completely beat Spurs in every position in the midfield. And little Martinez, only 5'9", marking one of the best strikers in the world, completely out of the game, into his pocket. So many positives for this game, and we're going to go through them all today. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about the Newcastle game as well, because we didn't really do a masterclass on that. Hardly a masterclass at 0-0 with hardly any pressing football. But what did we see today? I think we saw a little kind of, what I would say, tribute to Ralph Rangnick football. It's a proper gegenpress today, pressing high up the pitch, saying to Tottenham, come for us. You're at Old Trafford. If you're going to play through us, you're going to be clever, then we'll nick the ball off you and we'll score goals. 2-0 was a fair result.
Yeah, I was so impressed. The most impressive thing for me, Rob, was actually the counter-pressing. United won the ball back countless times, high up the pitch, and they exploited Spurs. And I think what I was really impressed with, though, was just the effort. I know that's such a basic thing to say. We've seen so many times this season, or even last season, where the players aren't even putting the effort in. So I know these are bare minimums, but slowly we're building something really good. I think, when United have a bit more quality, maybe in that number 9 position, a goalkeeper, De Gea has actually improved the last 2 or 3 weeks, but a goalkeeper who's more comfortable with his feet, who's more comfortable going short, and another midfielder in there that can do what Eriksen does, maybe a Frankie de Jong. United are going to have a really, really good side because you can see the foundations are there. You can see the patterns of play in the final third. You can see the structure, the shape. So that's the positive thing. But before we go into that, a lot of you in the comments, thanks guys for joining us as always and joining the Masterclass family. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and also make sure you give us a retweet on Twitter as well and share this with all your friends. Give us a follow on at Man United MC. Give myself a follow on at Haider_Rubbani and Rob a follow on at _Rob_B. As always, Rob, we'll begin the show with the graphic from SofaScore. So what we have here on the screen is we have the United's lineup, we have Spurs' lineup as well. United went for that 4-3-3. I know it says 4-2-3-1 here. More of a 4-3-3, with Casemiro at that base in midfield. I want to talk about Casemiro as well, because we haven't had an opportunity to speak on the Masterclass about him yet. We saw David De Gea in goal. Shaw, who's actually come back and played really well. I'm really impressed with what I've been seeing from him. He's so good on the ball, and I think that's why he's playing instead of Malacia.
There he is.
Shawberto Carlos on your cup.
There he is.
Fantastic. And then we've got the defensive partnership of Martinez. The Butcher kept Harry Kane very quiet tonight. Doesn't matter if you're 5'9". It doesn't matter because he is just dominant in the air, great on the floor. Fantastic in terms of his aggression and reading of the game. He's a great passer of the ball as well. Rafa Varane, great to see him back, a leader at the back. Diogo Dalot as well. Had a bit of a rocky game against Newcastle. Probably the worst game I've seen him play this season, but he was really good today at times. Still has a couple of defensive lapses, but he's definitely improved, and Erik ten Hag's made a good player of him. Fred and Casemiro, the Brazilian double pivot that we see for the Brazilian national team. We saw Brazilian Fred this week. Last week we saw against Newcastle probably not the non-Brazilian Fred. He was awful. And then we had Jadon, Sancho, Bruno, and Anthony, and Marcus Rashford up front. Great to see Rashford back, and I think that was a big selection decision from Ten Hag that he got correct. It helped United play the way they did. just having a look at that and then watching the way Spurs set up as well, you can see they went for three at the back. They went for quite a defensive sort of midfield, I would say. You're looking at Højbjerg, Basuma, and Bentancur. Not many of them are going to pick a pass, and he went for Harry Kane and Son up front. No Kulusevski, which is big for United. Actually, he's been out for a few weeks, and we saw Richarlison's injured as well. So having a look at this, when you're looking at the teams, I mean, United completely played off the park, didn't they?
Yeah, completely. And I think for me, looking at the Newcastle game, also I was at Old Trafford for the match, but I wasn't there tonight. When you looked at the setup, this was kind of what I wanted United to do against Newcastle. Looking at how Newcastle played the game, I'd have preferred Rashford up top and Eriksen in the midfield. Now, obviously, Eriksen's been ill, so he was on the bench. Obviously, came on at the end for a little cameo. But Marcus played tonight after having his own little cameo against Newcastle. And I think in the 20 minutes that he played, against Newcastle, that was the best United had in terms of their ball retention and moving the ball on and kind of playing a brand of football that looked like we might score some goals. So tonight he set up with the 4-2-3-1. Again, not the traditional double pivot. What we've been seeing is Casemiro being more of a number 6, single pivot on his own. Fred bursting up the pitch, doing the number 8 work. And obviously then Bruno coming from midfield as well. So it's more of a 4-3-3, but a 4-3-3 that's fluid and actually works. So I think this is, again, going back to, let's say, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer time, where Ole would talk about maybe playing 4-3-3 one day, but never feeling that he could do that because of his personnel. I think what you've seen with Erik ten Hag very quickly is that he's worked out how you can play 4-3-3 in the Premier League against some very good teams as well. Looking how Tottenham's set up there with this kind of 3-5-2, very fluid at the top end, allows Kane and Son to go and do the work that they want to do. But what was good from United was that United just gave them nothing, absolutely nothing in that middle day. Talking about Bentancur, Basuma and Højbjerg, what they do is kind of stop the opponent on the counter press and get the ball moving. But what did United do? United just played high up the pitch. They just were like, we're going to live in your third and we're going to punish you. And let's be honest, with the chances that United had, and we'll look at the stats in a second, they could have scored a lot more goals tonight than 2. They were a bit more clinical. But at the end of the day, it was just about getting 3 points, and they did that comprehensively.
I want to touch on Casemiro, Rob, and we'll talk about a few players as well before we go into the statistics of the game, because United utterly dominated. I mean, I think 2-0 was a fair result. It could have been more, could have been 3 or 4, as Alan's saying in the comments. Mm-hmm. Casemiro, right? So we had a lot of discussions before. There's no doubting we knew he was a world-class player. I think one of the concerns, maybe from you, not so much myself, I think it's fair though to say, is that he's coming from with a massive wage, massive transfer fee. He's approaching 30. He's won all he can win. The question was, are United getting the Casemiro that has gone and won those 5 Champions Leagues? I think initially when he came in, and it's natural, the players take time to adapt, to get match fitness is massive, isn't it? You can be training every single day, but actually playing in the match environment. The Premier League's a very intense, quick, stop-start league as well. You have to be able to change gear. Casemiro looked a little bit shaky. We saw the best and the worst of him against Everton. Gave the ball away for the goal, then gave the ball away again, but then dispossessed Onana and played a fantastic ball for Ronaldo to score his 700th goal. But what we saw from Casemiro tonight, what surprised me about him is how good he is in possession, Rob. How good his vision is as well. He's not Frankie de Jong, but that's been such a big difference for Manchester United, I think, as a team, because they've got someone who's comfortable picking up the ball back to goal, turning, and then playing it forward. And that just changes Manchester United's team. So that's what I've been really impressed with. He's still got to get up to speed a few bits here and there. There's no doubting he's a top player. No one else in Man United's squad is close to that. When you're looking at the defensive midfielders around the league, you've got the Rodris, you've got Fabinho who's out of form, but Casemiro is at his best. I think he's better than all of them.
Yeah, I think, again, if you play 4-3-3 like this is how Ten Hag is trying to play it, you're still not really playing with the defensive midfielder. I know I bang this drum all the time when I talk about midfields, because really it's up to everyone to defend, but you end up having it more as a triangle there with a number 6 doing the number 6 work as we kind of know it. But as you just said there, Casemiro's job is also to get the ball and distribute, get it going. Nowhere at the standard of, say, a Frankie de Jong, nowhere at the standard even of a Christian Eriksen. But what Casemiro gives you is just a solid pair of eyes and ears and a brain in the center of the park. And that's what we've been missing. The key word you used there, Haider, was comfortable. That's what it is that when the ball's at his feet, we're not all going, oh, don't give it away, Fred, McTominay, whoever. And that's what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years, isn't it? We've always worried when the ball's in the centre of the park, because how do you get it out from the centre backs going forward? You can maybe then look at Harry Maguire and Lindelof and think, well, can you imagine they've had to cope with that for 2 years as well? Would they be better with a Casemiro in front of them? Potentially, but I still wouldn't have them in the team.
We saw Lindelof actually come into the side and look better, didn't he? With a proper
Not for
defensive.
me.
Well,
no, I thought it was awful.
So?
I thought it was horrific. You think about the goal that United gave away against Nicosia, it was his fault. He goes forward to the ball, loses it, and then the ball plays behind him, and he's just lost. So they're okay players. I'm not kind of trying to big them up or anything. What I'm saying is it's about security around you, isn't it? So United played 4-3-3 tonight, and a 3-5-2 should outnumber you in certain positions. It should be able to get the ball and play round you in that three. But they didn't get round United because of how United decided to apply themselves. And this is the core difference between Newcastle the other night and today. And that is United applied themselves from the first minute, from the centre forward running forward to the midfield pushing up, having the wide players tucked in a little bit, doing that work, not allowing the ball through in wide areas. And I said it, I was like, you have to keep Perisic quiet. If you keep Perisic defending, which is what Anthony did, kept him up that end of the pitch, then you're going to hurt Spurs massively in terms of their own creation. That's exactly how it panned out in the end. And it was just a very pleasing performance. And with a formation we're getting used to seeing now. I think Ten Hag's been repeating this over and over again. But there's still bits and pieces that you can tweak. We've still got Martial to come in, Eriksen to come back. There's no doubt. I think like Scott McTominay came on for the latter part of the game and again showed good energy in that part of the park where you need to push the ball forward. You don't have to be a great passer of the ball. You just have to do the work, do the pressing. And I think Bruno Fernandes tonight, first half a little bit shaky, but definitely looking more at it. Second half, absolutely brilliant. The Bruno Fernandes that we know. And the Bruno Fernandes who is just so much better without Cristiano Ronaldo. It's the truth. We said it last year, and I'm going to keep saying it because it is the truth. It's not make-believe. Bruno Fernandes is a better footballer when he's got Rashford or Martial in front of him.
The whole
than he
team
has when
functions better, Rob, without Ronaldo.
It does. The whole world functions better. Like, I've seen the comments here. It's blowing up about Ronaldo walking off before, and the camera caught that. I think that's unfortunate more than anything for us because now people have to talk about it and address it. But at the same time, what are you doing, Cristiano? Come on. So all of this about he loves United, respects United, just leave. Just go. Leave the football club. We need his £500,000 a week back because then we can go and buy another striker or buy another midfielder or buy another fullback. And you can't do it with this guy. I think what we saw, isn't it, against Newcastle, is that United just ran into brick walls non-stop because they had no press. And tonight was the opposite, wasn't it? Loads of pressing, loads of movement. And I think, say, United carried Jadon Sancho most of the game. He didn't have a particularly good game. And I think United did get stuck now and again when in transition. But because everyone else was doing the work and you had a really good fluid system, it completely worked for you. I think if you had Ronaldo tonight, I think United don't win this game.
Good comment here, Rob, from Alan saying there's no comparison to what Ten Hag plays versus midfield under Solskjaer. We knew that it was very rigid, wasn't it? The double pivot was very rigid. Friend McTominay. And it's completely different. And it's great to see. We're seeing really fluid football. We're seeing the players actually take on the instructions as well. We're seeing them play with their brains. I'm seeing that a lot. There's players where I'm like there's one, the reading of the game. I know this is not with the ball, but without the ball. Do you remember in the second half where Son was running and I think Perisic played the ball and Dalot spotted it so early, cut it out, and then just passed it back inside rather than blasting up the pitch. And I think it's just little things like that, but it's the players starting to play with their brains more rather than playing impulsively. So the comment here saying where under Solskjaer they were just there to try and break up play, much more fluid no matter which midfields are in midfield. I absolutely do agree with that, and I do want to talk about Sancho because there is a comment here from Helen saying, we'd love to bring up more conversations about Sancho non-existent tonight. Now, I do want to talk about Jadon Sancho because I'm seeing one of my frustrations with the United fan base. We're all guilty of it. I've done it before as well, But my biggest frustration is that look, we're building something slowly. We've got a new manager come in. He's trying to completely overhaul the playing style. We've just spoken, like Alan said, the way that United played under Solskjaer, the way the makeup of the squad was, to then change it to a possession-based pressing team. It takes a lot of time. He hasn't got all the players that he wants in key positions. when one player plays well, so we've seen Marcus Rashford get a lot of abuse last season. Now he's having a good season. So now it goes on to Bruno Fernandes. Now Bruno Fernandes is getting abuse. Now Jadon Sancho, who had a good start to the season, is getting abuse. When does it stop? This sort of just like, it's almost, what do we call it? It's like hysteria every time one player is this doing bad, so now we go on to another player. When we talk about Jadon Sancho, can he be better? Yes. Should he be more direct? Yes. We saw him come on against Ammonia, and he actually created the goal. I thought today he gave the ball away too many times. We saw that in the first half, the first 10 minutes. I think, and he did it maybe 3 times in nearly 10 seconds in dangerous areas. Yes, but he's still learning the system. He's still, adapting to the league. Sometimes it takes more than a year. Is he playing to his full potential? No. Should Martial come back on the weekend? Would I start Sancho? No, I push Rashford to left. Generally, right now, I don't think he's in my starting front three. But I haven't given up on him, and he just needs to build his confidence. This is how I feel about Sancho. I think it's fair to criticize his performances. People are writing him off and saying he's a waste of money, this, and this. And they have to understand that Jadon Sancho needs runners around him. He's one of the smartest players. There's a lot of calls to play him as a number 10. I think that's an interesting idea. But he's a player who, has to have the right conditions around him to also fulfill his potential.
Yes, look, we don't do hysteria on this show, do we? We never have done it. We're not going to start doing it now. But we will talk about Jadon Sancho because I think there was so many good things about Man United tonight. Really were, every position from back to front, so much cohesion, so much fluidity, just lots of heart, lots of desire, lots of running, lots of great stuff. You just mentioned Jadon there about giving the ball away. I don't have a problem with Jadon giving the ball away because when he's on the ball, he makes stuff happen. The issue for me is when he's off ball. So what do we mean by off ball? It means about what is he doing in terms of setting traps and doing the work on the left. I don't know if you saw in the first half, it was very prevalent in the first half, but there was a lot of Marcus Rashford looking over his shoulder towards Jadon going, get up the pitch with me, get up. And Jadon sort of going, yeah, mate, forgot, sorry. Now,
is that a conditioning thing, Rob? Because I look at Sancho, I don't think he looks the fittest.
I don't think he's unfit. So, you or me might have trouble doing it, Haider, because conditioning would be an issue. I don't think Jadon Sancho, who's been working out all summer long, has a real problem with match fitness or anything like that. I really don't believe that for a second. I think this is all about kind of cognitive behavior, about how is it a trigger? Is it something that you just think to do, or are you kind of being coerced to do it? And we know with Jadon Sancho, he's a street footballer. Yeah, he's a cage footballer. He wants the ball at his feet. He wants to be able to dribble into small areas. But you can't do that on a press. You've got to be pushing up together. You've got to trigger it as a set system. And you saw today, Rashford was doing it really well. Bruno did it really well. You saw that Anthony was doing it well. The one person who wasn't doing it well on that side was Jadon. So, if I'm the manager, I think at the end of the day, Jadon actually got the assist, didn't he, for Fred's goal? I think it is credited to him.
It should be credited to him, yeah.
It was one of those kind of half backwards assists where, he didn't, did he really deserve the assist? Kind of, it was a deflected goal. You take every goal as it comes, you're happy with them. But I just think overall, I tweeted this at half time, I want more from Jadon Sancho. So, I agree with what you're saying there. Give him time, etc., etc., etc. But like you just said there again, I'd probably drop him for the next match. So that doesn't work, does it? For me, this kind of thing with Jadon Sancho, if Martial is fit, probably drops out now, doesn't he? And I want Jadon Sancho to prove himself beyond doubt that he is an automatic starter, that we go before the game's even happened, Haider, Sancho's got to start. This is what I said about Casemiro a couple of weeks ago. It already feels now a Casemiro that you can't not start him. Now you have to start him. You're paying him big money. You paid the big money to get him to come to the football club. And it took him a month to kind of get there. But now you're thinking it's Casemiro plus Bruno plus probably Eriksen. If you're looking at your best three. That's what I want from Jadon. I want Jadon to say, no, I can't be not picked here because I'm Jadon Sancho. Let's be honest. As it stands today, is Jadon Sancho going to the World Cup with England? Don't know. Probably not at the moment.
Probably not.
So Jadon's got to play better, isn't he? This was a game again. I think the squad gets picked pretty soon, doesn't it? It's named in the next couple of weeks, I think, is it? Or next 10 days. And, does Jadon Sancho's form at the moment dictate that he goes on the plane to Qatar? No, and I think that's sad for Man United fans. Not that he's not going to the World Cup or won't go to the World Cup, but more the case that he's not showing the form. If he's not doing stuff on the ball, Haider, and he's giving the ball away when he's dribbling, I'm all right with that. I'm okay with it to an
Not in
extent.
dangerous areas, though. We're
Yeah,
not.
but I haven't seen him give it away really in danger. I think he did it once early in the game, and Luke Shaw covered him, and it wasn't like a catastrophic, terrible, Aaron Wan-Bissaka moment or something like that, where he's completely lost the plot about what he should do with it, and what we've seen maybe with Freddie McTominay last year, giving the ball away in bad areas. I think Jadon's giving him away in what you would call good areas normally, but I just think that in the press he needs to be better, and if he doesn't do that press, then you need to reshape that side of the pitch. We're going to talk at the end of the show about a certain guy called Cody Gakpo who plays on the left and through the middle. And, if I'm Jadon Sancho, I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm thinking, well, if United are looking at an alternative here on the left, like you just said there, Marcus Rashford. If Martial's fit, it's Rashford on the left now, isn't it? And that's because of Sancho's form more than anything, because the form's not good enough. But you get away with it one tonight, Haider. It's 2-0. It's all positive. I don't think there'll be too much heat on Jadon.
Last thing I'll say on that, Rob, before we look at some of the stats from the game, is that Jadon Sancho is supremely talented, probably the most,
Definitely.
in my opinion, talented player in that squad. That's the frustration, right, for fans, is that we know what he can be, but I do also think a lot of fans maybe have misprofiled him as well. He was never explosive. He was never the quickest player, but his vision was fantastic. He made things happen on the ball. His decision making was very, very good. We have seen that actually with him. My biggest frustration with him, and against Ammonia he did this, but he was passive. Against City he was passive. Against Newcastle he was passive as well. Should have had a penalty.
Tonight he was passive.
Tonight, passive,
Definitely.
and that's my frustration with him. So for me, I think that comes from confidence as well. But it will only help him to have Luke Shaw, playing, behind him as well, because I think Luke Shaw's the sort of player that he can benefit of. What we don't see though under Ten Hag is we don't see overlapping fullbacks. They come in and they're mainly inverted. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see what Jadon does. I'd like to see him probably as a number 10 and see how that could work. We have got options there. I know that we've got Eriksen and Bruno, but it's interesting. Look, Ten Hag has options. I think it's only a positive, Rob, that you're saying Jadon Sancho's going to be sitting on the bench. That's a positive. United haven't had that in a long time.
Strengthens your bench. Yeah. You need a strong bench. So, I've got no problems with Jadon Sancho dropping out for now, but I just want him to say, look, you bought me for all this money. I'm going to have that number 7 on my back maybe one day. Because out at the moment, you're kind of thinking, will he wear the number 7 next year?
Will it weigh him down?
Is it going on his back, or are you buying someone else and saying, you have the number 7? Does Anthony get the number 7? Yeah. This is the thing. There's competition for that famous number, and you'll probably go out and buy more good players in the next couple of windows. So I think Jadon Sancho, as much as that he is a young player and he's got time, he's not that young, and he's had quite a bit of time already. So we need to see more. I think Anthony's only been at the club 2 minutes. I think his levels are higher than Sancho's and have been since the moment he walked into the football club. He's not going to give you perfect games either, but you're expecting a player
he needs to use that right foot a little bit more, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he does need to use that right foot more, but in the same way that Ryan Giggs never used his right foot because he didn't have one. So it's a problem. Like, you would like him to use both feet, like that one where the ball went over to the far post and you just think volley it back across with your right foot. We all take that for granted that you should do that. But some of these players who are like intrinsically stuck with one foot just don't do it, do they? They just don't want to do it. But I would like to see Anthony do a little bit more of his right foot, but maybe not if he doesn't use it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on now, Rob, to the stats of the game. So look, United total domination, 28 shots. I mean, it was 19 at half time. That's the most under Ten Hag. 28 shots against a side that's in third place in the league, top 4 challenging in the Champions League. It was total domination. There's no doubt about that. United should have won the game, and they did, 2-0. 22 from open play as well. So United created chances today. And I think that's been a bit of the problem, hasn't it? Against Newcastle, I didn't feel like I think we had 2 shots on target against Newcastle. United should have had a couple of penalties. I think also Newcastle could have had a penalty. VAR was shocking, and it was a very strange game against Newcastle. But what United did well today, in my opinion, and we know we've spoken about this off air, and you agree with this, but Man United looked a much better side because they had a number 9 that did the work, and a number 9 that ran the channels and scared Spurs with his pace. He was not clinical enough, Rashford, and we know that with him. Although, look, he should have got a goal in that first half. But sometimes, and this is what people don't maybe understand this, is that they just look at Ronaldo and they look at obviously the goals he scored. He's not the same player anymore, but they just assume that you transfer him in and then he'll be in that position. There's no guarantee. a lot of these chances are created as well from the movement of Marcus, for example, at number 9. He's creating space for others. He's making those runs. He's linking up the play. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, Rob, United probably still need a number 9. I really like Ivan Toney. I think he's sensational. I watched him a little bit earlier today before the game against Chelsea, and he was great in that first half. But United looked a much better side, like I said, because Marcus Rashford gave United that work that Ronaldo can't do anymore.
And that's the trade-off. Like there's a comment there from someone there that says the guy in the orange hat, me, is stupid. Ronaldo would have scored a hat-trick today, is what the comment says. And there's still this thinking, isn't it, that if everyone just does the work for Cristiano, that you give the ball to Cristiano and he scores goals like it's 1999 or something, 20 years ago or something, when he was a kid. Look, people need to understand what's going on here with Ten Hag's system and why it didn't work under Ole, why it didn't work under Ralph, and now why it's working under Eric Ten Hag. And it's working under Eric Ten Hag because they're all working as a unit and as a team. Man City win games not because Haaland just taps all the goals in, but because they're a unit and they're drilled, and they've been drilled for 6 years and they're ahead of the game. Liverpool, people were writing them off 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Now you can see that Liverpool, once they get their pieces back and they're more comfortable, that they'll be back where they probably
Klopp
should
changing
be.
things around, they're playing 4-4-2, Salah more
But
central.
but he's had to because they've had injuries. So like he won't, he'll change stuff when he has to. Unlike, say, Guardiola, who will stick to his philosophy, hella high water and play players all out of position and all that. And it works for him. That's how it goes. And I think with someone like with Ten Hag, he's very similar. He'll have his system. He'll have the way he wants to play. I do not believe at all, and I really, really believe this, I don't believe that he would want Ronaldo as his striker at any point in this season. And he's using Ronaldo because he's got him and he has to use him because you've got no choice, have you? You've got people injured. So you have to play Ronaldo. He didn't play Ronaldo tonight because Ronaldo didn't give them running against Newcastle and you drew that game. And that's the bottom dollar. So, again, people think that you give Ronaldo 50 chances and he'll get you a hat-trick every week. Well, yeah, if you give him those chances, but you can't work like that in the Premier League. It doesn't work like that. Haaland gets the chances at City because it's such a perfect symphony orchestra. Everyone knows what the tune is and they play it to perfection. And then Haaland could just be Haaland. But Ronaldo can't be Ronaldo at Man United, not the Ronaldo that people think they knew 10 years ago. So this is why Rashford was essential today, because he'd give you that straight line running. He'd go into the channel. He'd go and set traps. Did you notice today that he was setting the trap on the left and the right? So every time the ball went from the center to the right or to the left, Marcus went and did a diagonal run, set a trap there. It didn't allow the ball to come back out the other side. And that meant Anthony and Sancho on the other side could push in and trap the ball back in that corner. And it worked because Spurs couldn't get out. Spurs didn't find their way out from there. Perisic was a bit like, this is not my game. I'm stuck here. I'm too deep. I can't, I haven't got any space in front of me to run or to work. And that all came from the front, comes from the centre forward. So your first defender, I always say, is the striker. And Ronaldo can't do that for you, but Marcus can. I think we've lost Haider there. I think his Wi-Fi was flipping in and out. But yeah, I think this is the whole thing about Ronaldo. I'll just talk as well about him walking off again. I just think we're in a situation now at Man United where you can either look to the past at what Cristiano's given us, and I know people love him, and I know why they love him, and they should. I get that he's an icon. I understand why United fans worship him, but the day has come and it has gone. And it wasn't here last year. He got goals, but Man United were not very good last year, and that was with Ronaldo. So this year, I think even when you see Ronaldo make these minutes, he played kind of like 2 or 3 games straight, didn't he? And you could see that Man United were not particularly that good off the ball and not threatening. Tonight, you saw the chances, at least, that United were creating opportunities. 7% conversion rate is a worry, and that probably means you need to go and buy a striker in January. I think Ivan Toney is a good shout there. Haider, someone I've talked about a lot. But 28 shots on goal today compared to what you were doing against Newcastle and compared to what you were doing against Nicosia, it's night and day, isn't it? It's like a different team. And I'm going to keep saying this now. I'll say it on every masterclass. If they've proved they can press like that against a Spurs team that plays 3-5-2, a Conte team, they can do it against every team in the Premier League. There's no excuse anymore. There's no, oh, can we do it this week or can we not do it this week? Can we be bothered? Yes, you can be bothered. You all get paid millions of pounds. Do some running, do what your manager wants them to do. And it goes back again to the Rangnick point that we've said so many times, is that they didn't want to run for Rangnick because Rangnick was an interim. Now they've got a coach telling them to run, and they're suddenly running. I still think it could get better, Haider. We're still, this is the start of the project. Good signs. I said 3 good wins against 3 very, very good sides in the Premier League, but you're getting towards where you want to be. And I'll just say one more thing. I said it last year, Arsenal would be title contenders this year because of the way they were setting up. Man United could look at themselves now and compare themselves to what Arsenal were 12 months ago, which means that in 12 months' time, if you get the signings right, you get the bad eggs out of the football club who are not helping you anymore, the ones on the big wages or whatnot, get the kids playing, make it all work, you can be title contenders very quickly.
I 100% agree with that. Something I do want to say is, like, you mentioned the conversion, and that's correct. United need to score when they're on top. I know that we didn't score in that first half. They need to do that. It's happened a few times where, like, chance after chance, we haven't been clinical enough. So, look, the number 9 is important as well, but these guys need to be better with their opportunities as well. Like, Marcus has missed obviously the one against Newcastle. We saw the one with Fred as well. We saw the worst of Fred. I actually do want to talk about Fred and Bruno now, Rob. Let's talk about Fred because really great performance. 8.3 on Sofa score. We saw him get a goal all over the pitch, playing higher up now, as we've seen, obviously, because when you have, for example, Casemiro in there, we're not seeing Fred sit in a deeper position. We're seeing him play more of the role that he plays for Brazil. But what he's really good at, we know this already. We saw this on the Rangnick. He's great at breaking up the ball. He's amazing at pressing. He's probably the best presser in the team, I would say. The way that he's able to, his stamina, his reading of the game is pretty good. He's not good when he has to turn around and there's space in behind. But we know that what he is good at is what we saw tonight. So Fred's not going to play every single game. We know Eriksen has his place, but he was fantastic today. So you've got to commend him because last week he was awful. Disaster class in that first half. But this week, Jekyll and Hyde player. We see the best of Fred and the worst of Fred. And I think there's a player in there, but there are games where he's useful. And I think today was one of those games.
Yeah, you said you think he's probably the best presser. I would say he's the most combative, but I don't think he's the best presser because pressing's about intelligence. It's about knowing when to go. So I think sometimes still Fred leaves himself a little bit exposed, but what he does do is just gives you that energy in there. So he gets his goal tonight, happy for him, happy that he kind of got in that position. I do think he suffers as a number 8. Now I've watched it and seen it more and think about what he did in the double pivot last year. I actually think the double pivot, he's less exposed, bit deeper, but he's not a defensive midfielder. So, he loses that side of it as well. But he gets you a goal tonight. Would I want him to play ahead of Eriksen? Absolutely not. Am I happy to have Fred on the bench to kind of come on and play an energy role? Yes. Do I think Fred is behind McTominay in the pecking order? Just about, I think so. I don't think there's a lot in it. I still think McTominay is probably a better number 8 than Fred overall. So if you're going to play these systems of 4-3-3, you've now got at least options, haven't you? You've got some combinations that are working. And I just think I was worried tonight without Eriksen because I think Christian Eriksen is now potentially the most important player at the club.
Yeah,
because he's the only guy. He's the only guy that can just outthink opponents. So Bruno, I think today had definitely one of his best games of the season, if not his best game. But I think it was more for Bruno about his work rate being in the right areas and turning midfield play into opportunities. And we were not seeing that against Newcastle with Ronaldo in front of him. It just doesn't work. The channel just gets clogged up. United don't move the ball quickly. And I thought tonight Bruno moved the ball with better pace. It took time. Like I think it was about 60 minutes. And then he started to just pop it around better and it was more controlled. But the manager said before the game, he was talking about Bruno, and he said, I think, again, I tweeted this out. He said that Bruno is a better player playing off a striker on the edge of the box. Hallelujah. That's where I want Bruno Fernandes to play. I don't really want Bruno as an 8. It's not really what he's good at. When Bruno's are in and around the box, when it drops to him, like today, edge of the box, what happens? Top corner, no problem. So let's see more of that Bruno Fernandes. And I think now it's about this season establishing maybe his contact with Martial up top. Hopefully Martial can get fit. And if not Martial, then it will be Marcus Rashford.
Something I want to add about Eriksen, I completely agree, Rob, and that was glaringly obvious against Newcastle, right? When you look at Christian Eriksen, what does he offer? He's the only player that can break the lines from deep for Man United, great verticality, and he's just so calm and composed on the ball. What we've seen with Ten Hag as well, I think the biggest positive for me is we saw it very clearly in the Everton game. We saw it at times tonight, not as much, but the way that Ten Hag likes to build up in that, 3 and then the 1 and then 6, you see the fullbacks push up. We're seeing that more and more. And I think that's the positive thing, is that we're seeing Ten Hag's principles out on the pitch, and that's why he wanted to sign Frankie De Jong. And I'd still be going back to Barcelona in the summer and getting Frankie De Jong. So I don't think there's any play. I saw people talking Jude Bellingham, Frankie De Jong. I don't think Bellingham does what Frankie De Jong can do to that level. Jude Bellingham was a fantastic player. I'd probably want to see Jude Bellingham a little bit further forward, but I don't think that he is the right sort of player that Manchester United need, the right profile. And I think that's a positive thing for me. But we've seen that without Eriksen, though. And this is a concern for me. If he gets injured or he's sick or whatever, then Man United are almost back to square one. Today it worked because I think Spurs also did play into United's hands. United were smart. They won the ball back, in midfield quickly, and then they played it forward. But there's going to be a lot of games where Fred's not going to pick the lock, is he?
Most games. So like Fred's not picking anyone's lock, even if you give him the key. So yeah, I think the whole thing with Fred, again, it's stylistic issues, isn't it? It's about what can people do together as a team, whether it's pressing or passing or control. This is why you brought on Eriksen at the end of the game, because you just wanted to kind of control a few more parts of the pitch. You bring on McTominay because you want McTominay pushing forward just into that central space, which he did really well in that final part of the game. You just mentioned Frankie De Jong. I'm going to address Frankie De Jong. I wouldn't go back for Frankie De Jong now. I'm done with Frankie De Jong. I don't care how good he is. If Frankie De Jong wants to decide to stay at Barcelona so he gets paid because Barcelona's his dream and he likes the weather and his girlfriend's happy there, then we move on. And I still think you can find footballers who can pass the ball from A to B in that area. Frankie's very good at it, but Frankie doesn't even start all the time for Barcelona. So there's a reason for that.
It's not an ability thing, though, Rob.
It's not an ability thing, but quite often it isn't an ability thing. Like when we talk about Bruno Fernandes, it's not always about ability, is it? So, some of the things that he does wrong are quite often about chemistry, decision making, all sorts of weird stuff with players. Yeah, so Frankie De Jong might come to the Premier League and go, it's a bit fast this, and I'm out of position. I don't know how it works. We don't know about that yet. Jude Bellingham, I would go for Bellingham over him, because I think it's not that Bellingham would do that number 6 role, but I'm telling you, if you're playing 4-3-3, you want Jude Bellingham in there. Jude Bellingham would give you something different, a motor, someone who could do like.
Sadly, I see him at Liverpool, Rob.
I see him at Liverpool, but only Liverpool want to pay the money. Like I still do think at the end of the day, Liverpool, they don't want to stump up big cash and they don't want to compete with big clubs for players. They just don't want to do it. They've said it before. That's why they went with Darwin Núñez in the end, because they got him. United kind of fell out of the race. They were all right with that. There's nothing concrete on Liverpool and Bellingham at the moment. We'll talk about that another day, of course. But what I mean is that there are different types of midfielders that you could still bring in there. You look at Basuma today. Yeah, Basuma played for Tottenham. He's a player that you and me would have signed 12 months ago happily, wouldn't we?
He didn't look great, did he?
But he didn't look great. Exactly. That's my point. So there we go. So it's like we can feel these things about players, but it doesn't always work. So I think you need chemistry monsters. You need people who are going to come in and complement everything around you, make everyone better. That's what Eriksen does. When Bruno's at his best, like today, that's what Bruno does. When Bruno's really on it and, being cock-a-hoop and being the best version of himself, he can help the striker, he can help the midfield, he goes into the wide play areas at the right times, not just all the time, and he helps his club. Today, he looked like a captain, and I've been saying this for the last few weeks, that I don't think he's been playing like a leader. Still way too much moaning. Stop moaning, Bruno. Get on with your job. And I think, but I think that's just part of his makeup. You're never going to be able to kind of eradicate that from his overall game. But just so much better from so many players today, especially from the Newcastle game, where I just felt United were really stagnant. And you just thought, are we going to take one step back now after Newcastle, or will we take that one step forward? I would say tonight we took 2 steps forward. So it was a really positive night and really positive result.
We have to carry that on against Chelsea as well, Rob. That would be a statement as well. Chelsea,
and I think they'll be happier against Chelsea, happier against Chelsea than Brentford. Brentford will outwork you and pummel you and hurt you, and you're like, oh, can I do this? Whereas Chelsea will just give you that extra bit of space. I mean, they're not going to not close you down, but they'll be more liked, as we saw tonight, with this Tottenham team, who can be quite physical and can be quite, a running side. But tonight, if you press them high, you trap them back in that low block. And they didn't play well out of the low block. This is where I think Eric Dyer gets an inflated kind of reputation, because he's not a passer of the ball out from the back. People say he is, and he's not. And tonight you saw the difficulties that he had with ball progression. Maybe in the same way that Harry Maguire has those problems, even though he's called a ball progressor. But you saw Martinez and Varane both very, very comfortable today against one of the best strikers in the world.
Martinez was fantastic, Rob. He every single game, I'm more and more impressed. He's a great addition. He's so important, and he's such a good passer of the ball, and it's just so nice to watch someone that can pick up the ball and just play through the line from the back. He's absolutely fantastic.
And he's gelling well with Luke Shaw. And this is, I think, the benefits now. Like we said, Luke Shaw looks like Luke Shaw now. Yeah. Shawberto on the cup. He looks like, again, you remember we said last year, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago when it clicked for him and he started playing well. What did we say? We went, it's like Luke Shaw's just gone and looked around him and gone, I'm just going to be Luke Shaw now. Let me just be Luke Shaw. I'm not going to help Maguire. I'm not going to come inside. Let me just do my job and I'll do it well. And he's gone back to that. I think last year he lost it. And then this year it seems to be the Luke Shaw that we all know and love.
It's interesting what you said, actually. We'll finish on this segment and then we'll talk about the final segment in a second. But it was interesting what he said about Ten Hag being a manager that selects you on merit.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because he was one of Ollie's favourites. And I think that was one of the issues under Ollie, is that if a player played poorly, they were just consistently selected. We've seen these leaks come out. I know Bailly said it, but Bailly can't keep fit. But I think that's one of my favorite things about Ten Hag so far, Rob, is that I don't care if you're the GOAT with 700 goals and one of the greatest players of all time. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're not giving me what I want in the system and not doing your role to the level that I require, then you're not going to be played. Harry Maguire, your captain, you're dropped. I know he's injured at the minute. Luke Shaw was dropped. Malacia was playing. Malacia was doing well defensively, wasn't offering much going forward. Still a young player. Luke Shaw worked hard, got himself back in the team, and now he's playing at a good level. And I like that. I like the players. Sancho has been dropped, for example, hasn't he, for a couple of games here and there. So I like that from Ten Hag, and I think that's important. Meritocracy is so important, and that gets buy-in from the squad. And I feel like we've got a buy-in. The squad are behind Ten Hag, even if there's a few murmurings here and there and a few leaks here and there. We've seen a few about Ronaldo, haven't we? It comes out when he doesn't play. But Rob, before we move on to that final segment, Cohen's saying, please talk about Bruno going to the right on the Antony sub. I noticed that as well. I think what I liked about Bruno was that I loved his off-the-ball work today in general. So I'm just going to go back to the first goal where he actually stole the ball, played to Antony into Sancho, and then Sancho to Fred. But Bruno Fernandes can play anywhere, can't he? Across that front three, or in the number 10 position, as we know. And I think that's actually possibly a position that, if Ten Hag wants to shore things up a little bit, then pushing Bruno to that right-hand side, because he'll do the defensive work, is an interesting option.
Yeah, I don't think it is a go-to tactic for Ten Hag, but what we've seen this season, we saw it earlier in the campaign. So when we saw Eriksen playing higher up the pitch, before he kind of became this cameo number 6 role that he was doing, you saw Bruno going and playing in wider areas. So tonight, you saw as soon as United got the second goal, I was like, here we go. This is going to be 4-6-0. This is going to be the formation now. You're going to pack the midfield. You're going to completely say to Tottenham, right, well, you're 2 goals down. You're going to come at us anyway. So we're just going to clog up all the lanes. You're not going to have to play football. So just to kind of make that work, obviously McTominay came in, did that kind of clogging work through the middle and did it really well. But then you can put Bruno in a wider role and you can take off maybe some of your more, what you call your flying wingers types, or your players who keep the width, Antony, Sancho, those types. And you can kind of fill them with a midfielder. Now, the interesting thing is that Eriksen could do that role as well. So I actually think if we do see that as a tactic moving forward, Eriksen himself has played as a wide player for many years on and off. So he's more adept at it than Bruno. But I just think tonight, as it was, obviously with Eriksen on the bench as well, and also not being very well, so he's come back into the team just straight after sickness, that you push Bruno out there. Bruno can do that role. I don't think it's going to give you a lot of productivity, but you saw that he nearly got a goal from that as well, because he just played on the last man on that side with loads of space and was like, they're going to give me this space. I'm going to attack it. I'm going to have it. And he was very unlucky. He was only, borderline offside, literally a footstep. And it would have been a really deserved second goal for him and a third goal for Man United. But Bruno, I think this is the Bruno I want to see. I want to see Bruno being the heart of the team. I want to see him earning that. I want to come away from matches going, Bruno is really good again today, like we were 2 years ago. And we've not had enough of that for the last 12 months. I think his numbers have got worse. His performances have got worse. He's moaned more. And I think it's categorically showed that he just cannot play with Cristiano. Like they don't mesh at international level and they don't mesh for Man United. And I really think Erik ten Hag knows that and believes that.
I think, yeah. And he's got the balls to drop Ronaldo as well. So that's important. Rob, let's move on now to the final segment of the show. And we're going to talk about Cody Gakpo because he's a player that came out yesterday and said that, he had discussions with United. He really almost saying, I hope United come back in. They're a big club, etc., etc. He has been absolutely phenomenal. I've actually watched him a lot more this season. I didn't watch him as much last season. I've just kept an eye on him because he's a player that was linked to Leeds as well. So it's interesting just to see, the level of the player. But like just looking at here on the screen, he's got 24 goals and assists. That's the most out of any player in Europe. That's more than Erling Haaland, who we've seen be absolutely ridiculous, haven't we, in the Premier League? Just he's a cyborg. He's unbelievable. Gakpo with 13 goals, 11 assists. You've seen Haaland with 20 goals, 3 assists. And then Neymar as well has had a really good season. He's got 21 goals and assists. That's 12 goals and 9 assists. So when we're talking about, and here's a graphic from SofaScore as well, you can see that laid out here, in terms of he's creative as well in terms of chances created in Eredivisie. He's second behind Dusan Tadic. You can see him as well in terms of shots on target per game. He's got the most, 2.2 per game. So that tells me a few things, Rob. It tells me, one, he's creative, so he's got really good decision making as well.
Yeah.
2, he's clinical. That's the main thing for me. Clinical, has an eye for goal, can finish, because I think that's actually an issue in this United front three. When Martial plays, we've seen he's had a really good goal and assist, game to minute, ratio, but he can't keep fit, and that's a real problem. When I've watched Gakpo, the biggest thing that stood out to me is, yes, he can play on that left-hand side. And you said earlier on the show, or off air, you were saying that Sancho might need to be worried. I actually think that Ten Hag could convert him into a number 9. I think he could play as a centre forward. When I watch him play, I think he can do off the ball work. I think he can hold the ball up well. But the main thing for me, he's clinical. And I think when you're looking at the few options, I've said Ivan Toney, who I would really like. But if Gakpo becomes available, which he most likely will, and they can get him in January, that could change United's season. Because United need a number 9. I think as the weeks are passing, while Marcus can do a role, I don't think that he's the player that's going to be the number 1 in the future. But what I really, really like from Gakpo is that he can keep fit as well. We've seen that with Martial. So what are your thoughts on that? Because he's a player that's also caught your eye.
Yeah, I like him. Liked him for a while, going back over a couple of years. We did a show, didn't we, on Gakpo going back when he was linked to United, and that was all moving. Cody Gakpo himself has obviously confirmed that in the last 24 hours, talked a lot about the move to Man United, how he discussed terms with Erik ten Hag, what Erik ten Hag wanted. Basically said, I would have liked to have joined Manchester United. PSV were happy for me to go. Then also said that Leeds and Southampton put in offers for him and he refused them and said no. And said that he would have liked to have gone United for his development. So he's thinking future tense. He's thinking, maybe I'd quite like to do that. Is he the number 9 you need in January to get you over the hump in the Champions League? I don't know. I would look at it like this. 13 goals and 11 assists are great numbers. There's no doubt about it. Kind of the same numbers that Jadon Sancho was returning in the Bundesliga, wasn't it? Kind of those kind of very level 20 goals, 20 assists, that kind of balance, incredible balance. Jadon Sancho's not delivered anything like that in a Man United shirt yet, but we hope he does. Do I think Gakpo is a stone cold number 9 for the Premier League? I just don't know. I've watched him a lot. For his numbers this year, they are really good, but I don't think he's a great finisher.
Can I ask a question, Rob? Did you think that Antony would be as good as what you've seen?
Yeah, I thought he would be doing what we're seeing. So we talked about when we did shows on Antony before he signed, and we did shows 8 weeks before he signed when we for the first communication when United offered 40 million for him, and obviously the price went up. But we said that Antony will press that area, that he'll dribble, give you ball progression, help the fullback, and do the wider work. Yeah, that's why we wanted him at the football club. Now, Jadon doesn't quite do that on the left, not the same player. But when you look at someone like Gakpo, will he be better than Martial? Will he be better than Marcus? So these numbers would suggest yes. But if these numbers in Premier League terms, when you look at the rate of return, say that this is actually 6 and 4, 6 goals, 4 assists as a 9. Does that get you over the hump? Not for me.
I'm still looking at Tony, to be honest, Rob.
Look, this is it, right? So if you want a number 9 that does number 9 things, but then does all the other bells and whistles and the cherries on the cakes, then you're going to have to pay the big money for someone like Ivan Toney. Now, Cody Gakpo is going to go at a bigger price than what he was looking at, when we were talking about earlier on, mid-20s, and then the price was going up and being driven up by PSV. And obviously United decided, no, we're going to put all our eggs in one basket and go and get Anthony. It made sense. But you're getting to a point now, aren't you, where you're thinking post-Ronaldo. What happens post-Ronaldo? And I think you're going to have to go and get a striker that you just kind of go at, someone that can do certain things and drop that jaw, as a 9. Martial can do stuff for you at 9. Rashford can do stuff for you at 9. I'm not convinced that Gakpo can do more than those two guys as a number 9. I'm really not sure. But I do think that I would like Gakpo to come into the club and play off the left, because he's a really good left-sided forward, like brilliant. Like, he's got everything. He can assist. He's got vision. He's got pace. He's got trickery. And he would give you better balance with Anthony than Jadon. So Jadon would then have to buck up his ideas, wouldn't he? And play at a higher level. I'm all right with that. I've got no issue with that. Bring players in who want to compete, because your number one competitor every week, Haider, is the guy in training, the one you're looking at. It's not the opponent. It's the person there who's going to take your place. Cody Gakpo would strengthen Man United's forward line, but I do think you need a proper number 9, like, someone like, Osman, someone like that.
Yeah,
there are players out there that can give you X factor at number 9. And that's what City have done now, isn't it? City have won titles, got to Champions League finals, done everything really without a number 9 post Aguero. And now they've gone, right, back to having a number 9, because we do need some of that X factor there. And I'm all for that. I think you need both options. You need players that can do certain things. Ivan Toney won't come cheap, but let's put it like this. Say Ivan Toney does get in that England squad, and say Harry Kane gets an injury and Toney plays, and Toney plays really well, because I think he would. I think he'd do well in that. People talk about Calvert-Lewin potentially going and all of this, and it's like, no, Ivan Toney's like twice the player. Ivan Toney, I think, would be brilliant at Man United. I think he'd be sensational, because he's not just a number 9, but he drops in and out, he links play, he presses. He's just very, very intelligent at how he plays the game. And he's, people compared him to Lukaku and like, oh, he's more like Lukaku. No, he's not. He really isn't.
Technically, he's phenomenal, Rob.
Yeah, he's technically so good. And he would complement those around him. And that's just what I keep saying. Bring in players that help everyone else, not just themselves, make others better. And that's the Ronaldo issue. Ronaldo makes no one better, just simply does not. So this is why you're moving on from Cristiano. Ivan Toney might cost you 70, 80 million, maybe even more. Like, if he has a good end to the season, could be a horrific price in the end. But there are players like Osman out there we haven't really spoken too much about. Players of that ilk where you could go, yeah, they can give you big value as a number 9.
Rob, final words before we wrap up. I just want to cast our eye to the Chelsea game as well. I want to talk about the formation. Would you be making any changes? Would you be bringing Eriksen back into the side? Because I think that's the key.
I'd bring Eriksen back into the side. I'd carry on playing 4-3-3. And a lot would depend on Martial's fitness. So Martial is fit and ready to start. I think the feeling is with Martial, and this is from things I've heard from the club, is that they're now going to go a little bit slower with him. He is fit. He is training. And he probably could have been on the bench tonight.
Yeah.
But the manager is going, I need this guy later. I'm going to need him in the weeks ahead. I'm not going to just put him out there and then risk him. I've got Marcus. I've got Ronaldo. I've got a few options there. And that's kind of where we sit with it. I think when you look at the Chelsea game, Potter is trying different things. It's not like Brighton Mark II at Chelsea. He's looking at their strengths. Probably will go back to a more kind of 3-4-3, which is what he likes to play and play with that width, giving Sterling more of a central role up the top end of the pitch. So how do you work that out? Well, then you obviously have Martinez. But I think what United will need is that it's what we saw tonight, but maybe a little bit more controlled. So at home, United really pushed and hemmed them back in a kind of lower block and forced them to play that game. And I think they'll push Chelsea back a little bit and say to Chelsea, the challenge, Haider, is to say to Chelsea, you play out through us. We'll counter press you. And if you give us the ball in midfield, we'll try not to kill you, but we will try and kill you. That's what we're going to do. So that's got to be the way. And I felt that today. I felt if they tempted Tottenham to try and play out from Dyer or one of those players sitting a bit deeper, even Perisic, that United could win the ball in midfield and could be on their bike straight away. That's why I wanted Rashford in the team, because Rashford gives you that pace. So I wouldn't really change the tactics at all, but I think you would probably maybe take Fred out, bring in Eriksen. You might have Eriksen and Casemiro more as a double pivot, and let Bruno be more of a free role, joining up with the forwards. I can see that happening. I can see that working. I think it's a good matchup for United Chelsea, in the same way that I thought Spurs was a pretty good matchup today, as long as United did the press, and they did do the press.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think those are only two changes I'd make, and then we've got to settle back forward, which is good. Casemiro picks himself now. Bruno Fernandes is the
It's
same.
all picking itself, isn't it? This is the good thing.
Yeah.
It's all the good stuff is there, and you kind of you can see it without even thinking. You kind of go, "Well, that works there, that works there," and this is why I'm saying it's positives, because we can talk about Jadon for an hour, couldn't we? And say we didn't like this, that, or the other. What's the point? The challenge is to Jadon is to be the best version that he can be, isn't it? So if he is, and the rest of the team do that and all follow along that same line, Luke Shaw's proved that he can do. Now Luke Shaw's probably going to go to a World Cup because of this. Marcus Rashford would be very unlucky not to go to a World Cup if it's so decided that that he's not of any use to Gareth Southgate. So this is what the challenge is now, I think, in the weeks ahead, these players to prove that they're bona fide starters, just like Martinez has, just like Varane has.
My final word, Rob, is it's been a long time since United can say half the team or more than half the team picks itself. It's been a long time since we've said that. We're thinking, who's going to play here? Who's going to be
Can't remember last time.
Who's the fullbacks? The back four settled. De Gea still picks himself as well.
Yeah.
Looking at that midfield, and obviously Eriksen will slot back in, and the front three, I think, then you might have Sancho, yes or no, but generally speaking, it picks itself. But anyway, guys, look, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to be back on the Masterclass. Make sure you give us a follow on @MayNightMC. Give me a follow on @Haider_Rubbani, and Rob on a follow at _Rob_B. And make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. As always, give us a retweet, give us a share. We'll be back after the Chelsea game. Great result, Rob. Really exciting to see what United can do. We'll see you all next time.